Hello everybody, welcome back to the YouTube channel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the Jaguars free agents and who I believe we should re-sign and who I believe we should just let walk. Now jumping right into it, let's talk about probably the biggest fish on the list in Dawuane Smoot. Smoot in 2019 had 17 total tackles for 6 tackles for loss, 7 QB hits, and 6 sacks, which is a very good stat line for a rotational defensive lineman. Then in 2020, he has 23 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, an impressive 17 quarterback hits, and 5.5 sacks. Meaning, in 2019, he had a lot more cleanup sacks, or coverage sacks, I'd like to call them. And in 2020, he's actually getting a lot more pressure on the quarterback between pressures and quarterback hits, but they're not resulting in sacks due to the back lines in the secondary not holding up as well as they did in 2019. And ultimately with Smoot, I do believe we should pay him. This is the type of guy you want to keep around. Smoot has been nothing but a professional in Jacksonville, and he honestly deserves to be paid. He did come out and turn a couple fans sour against him with his wording, where he did say he wanted to get paid what he was worth and he wouldn't take a hometown discount, which I agree with. If any of you were in his situation, you'd want the max money you could get as well. Could he sign for like a 3-year, $15 million deal? Yes, but do I think that's what he deserves? No, I do believe he's worth more than that. I think he should get somewhere in the ballparks of like 3-year, $21 million, somewhere in that range. Like the $7 million per year mark is a good mark for him. That's what a normal rotational defensive lineman of his status goes for about in the market. And ultimately, I think we should give it to him. I don't think we should get cute with it. Don't try to lowball him. Don't tag him. Don't do anything stupid. Just give him the money and just ultimately let him decide for himself if he thinks he's worth more. Let him go try in the open market. We went through this with Yannick. They think they're worth more than they are sometimes. And if Smoot's one of those where he thinks that, then so be it. Let him go figure it out for himself. Moving on to the next person, it's Westbrook. Now, Westbrook was very good for us in the first few years. In 2020, he's ultimately got his job lost. He's more or less been benched. I mean, he's been hurt, quote-unquote, for most of the year, but I don't believe that for every game. Maybe he had an injury early on, but I don't think he's been injured this entire time. In 2018, he had 66 catches for 717 yards and 5 touchdowns. I mean, that's a good stat line for a wide receiver 2/wide receiver 3. That's honestly all you could ask for, truthfully. And then 2019, he did similar. He had another 66 receptions for 660 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he slightly digressed, but I believe in 2018, he got a little bit more snaps and playing time than 2019, which ultimately resulted in him getting more touchdowns and more yardage. Even though it didn't show on the receptions part, but I do believe he got more of a chance in 2018. And in 2020, he has like 1 catch. He's been doing absolutely nothing. I don't think he's been really even playing. I think he's appeared in 2 games total so far. I'm one of the few who thinks we should re-sign Dede, but I don't think we will, judging by he's just been simply beat out by everybody else. He doesn't seem to fit in anymore. I liked Dede coming out of college. I thought he was a very talented wide receiver. I think if we do re-sign him, Trevor Lawrence could bring out his potential again and make him a really good wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 on this team. But ultimately, I don't see the Jaguars re-signing him. Do I personally believe we should? Yes, I believe we should give him a 1-year or 2-year type deal. Maybe a prove-it deal. He deserves it, in my honest opinion. I think we haven't given him a fair chance in 2020. And I think with Trevor Lawrence in 2021 and beyond, he could actually emerge as a legitimate wide receiver 2 in production. And moving on to the next guy, it's Sidney Jones. Now, this one's an interesting one for me. Sidney bursted onto the scene in, I believe his first game he had, four passes defensed? I mean, he just looked crazy. He landed up with 9 games, having 9 passes defensed, 26 tackles, a forced fumble, and 2 picks, which is very good for 9 games, honestly, and he was very stout in coverage. I mean, he was very good across from Henderson/Herndon, depending on who was hurt, who was playing at each time. I mean, he looked really good. I think we should re-sign him for sure. I think we will. I think it's a clear-cut decision that we have to re-sign him. I don't think there's any doubt in the front office that he can produce here if given the chance. The main concern with Sidney Jones is his health, but you can never not sign somebody simply off of the fact that they can't stay healthy for 1 season with you. He's been with us for a single season. We just picked him up this year. He didn't even start the year with us. We cannot hold that against him. I think we should sign him to like a 2 or 3 year deal worth about maybe in that 25 million range, and then make most of the money either A, non-guaranteed, or B, towards the back end of the deal where you can get away with cutting him if he isn't producing. But also, why I would do a deal like that is if he does turn into this amazing CB2 across from CJ Henderson, not only do we have our CBs of the future, but we also have him on a relatively decent contract to go along with first-round pick Henderson, who will still be on a rookie contract. Meaning we have two shutdown corners for relatively not a very high price. And ultimately, this could help us out a lot with other regards to paying other people in a couple years, because we do have a few people coming up. But to move on to the next guy, it's a guy I'm extremely high on. A lot of people are very hot and cold with him. I think he has to be re-signed, and that is Tre Herndon. He's a restricted free agent, so technically the Jaguars could keep him even if he doesn't quote-unquote sign with us. Or they could get a comp pick for him, whatever it may be. But in 2019, he had 55 tackles, a tackle for loss, 3 picks, and 13 passes defensed. He burst onto the scene after Jalen Ramsey pushed his way out of Jacksonville ultimately, and honestly left us out to dry. We were all in shock. We didn't know what we were going to do. Then out of nowhere, here comes Tre Herndon, the undrafted free agent, just bursting onto the scene. He had 2 picks against Sam Darnold and the Jets in one game. I mean, he was one of the best coverage corners last year, and honestly, it came out of nowhere. I didn't even see it coming. I truly believe he is that type of corner, but I believe his long-term fit is in the nickel or the slot, because in 2020, he now has 68 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, a sack, and 5 passes defensed. Now, he's got very impressive tackle numbers for a corner. He even has a sack and QB hits on the year. He's got 4 tackles for loss, which is good for a cornerback. Herndon is one of those guys where he is a very refined tackler, and he's good in run support. These 2 things, to me, make me feel like he has to be a slot corner for us long term. With Hayden, who I will touch on shortly, going to be a free agent as well, and he was predominantly our slot corner for the past 3 years, I think we have to re-sign Herndon. I don't think he's going to ask for a crazy amount of money, but I mean, you got to give him a low to mid-level contract if he asks for it. Now, I'm not saying you pay Herndon $10 million more a year. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I mean, you do have to pay Herndon for sure, and I'd want to honestly sign him for a longer type contract. I'd say into 3 to 4 year range. Herndon's still in his low to mid-20s. I mean, he's by no means old. He's the type of guy that you should realistically build your secondary around, even though a lot of fans get mad at him for blowing coverage here and there. I mean, every corner does it. Fans need to understand that. You're going to have blown coverages. The next guy for me is Cam Robinson. Now, this one's a tough one. Cam is a prototypical left tackle. He's decent. He's nothing special, but he's serviceable. And in today's league, left tackles get so overpaid due to how important they are. I don't think we should re-sign Cam Robinson. Could we? Yes, but I think he's going to ultimately get something in the $10 million plus a year range, which I do not think his production is worth. I think we'd be much smarter to go with a rookie left tackle at our second first round pick, which would be the Rams pick. I think that just makes way too much sense. We could even go at pick 33. That could also work for us. But ultimately, I just don't think you can pay Cam Robinson the money he's going to want. I don't think he's shown enough that he's good enough realistically to play up to a contract of that standard. Now, does he have the potential to? Yes. But has he shown you consistently on a consistent basis that he will play up to that contract? No. And for that sole reason, I do not think we should re-sign Cam Robinson. But ultimately, I think the Jaguars will re-sign him, whether it's for a short deal or a prove-it deal, just to keep him around, because, I mean, it doesn't hurt to have linemen that know the system, especially one who's been here for 4 years now, and I mean, he's been at least decent, so at worst, we could even kick him into guard if it comes down to it. There's so many different things we can do with him. I could see the Jaguars keeping him. Would I personally keep him, though? No, because I know his price is going to skyrocket in free agency. And on to the next guy is Keion Cole. Now, Cole has had a pretty decent 2020 season. He had 52 catches, 619 yards, and 5 touchdowns with 1 game left. So he could add a little bit to these stats, but I don't think he's going to add too much. And this is a guy I'd love for us to re-sign. But Cole being an undrafted free agent and having a very small contract for these past few years, I don't see us resigning him. I think he's going to get borderline overpaid by somebody. He's got that wide receiver 2 potential where somebody is going to overpay him because they see that potential in Cole, who can be a very, very good wide receiver. I mean, Cole has shown flashes of making amazing catches, and I just think a team's going to ultimately overpay him and outprice him from us. Between having to pay Chark and then just ultimately having so many positions to fill, I just can't see us re-signing Cole unless the price is right. And then I love Cole. I think he deserves to go get the bag somewhere. And if some place offers him like 4 years, $40 million, I mean, shit, he's got to take that, you know? We're not going to pay him that. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. We just won't pay him that. If we do, it's a slight overpay in our eyes because we do have Colin Johnson, Chenault, Chark, who needs to be paid as well. We have too much to do in the wide receiver room. I just don't think it's a smart option for us to tie that much money into somebody who's a wide receiver 2/wide receiver 3. And ultimately, I don't think we should re-sign him. But I could see the Jaguars going against my opinion on this and actually re-signing him. And on to the next guy is DJ Hayden. This one's clear cut. I just don't think he's going to be re-signed. If he's re-signed, it's going to be like a 1-year league minimum type deal. He's just not. He's been hurt. He's getting old. He's going into his 30s now. I mean, what else is there to say? He's had 18 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 QB hit on the year. In 5 games, he's been hurt the entire year. I loved Hayden and what he brought to us a couple of years ago. But I think he's just getting older, injury prone, and I ultimately think it's about his time in Jacksonville, at least, maybe even his career. I could see him retiring in another year or two. He might go somewhere to like a contender as a depth guy, but I don't think he has much left in the tank. I love Hayden. If we do land up keeping him for like 1 or 2 more years on a really, really small deal, I won't be mad. I just don't think he's a starter level cornerback anymore in the league. And then on to the next guy is Chris Conley. Conley is one of those guys who did his job ultimately last year for us. He had like 750 yards for us and was ultimately the deep ball guy, the jump ball guy, whatever you want to call him. But this year, he's had so many drops. He's been so inconsistent. He only has 33 catches for 384 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is nothing special. I mean, granted, he's been in a wide receiver 3 role for majority of the year, even wide receiver 4 at times. But still, I mean, I don't think he's worth re-signing. I think, again, it's similar to the DD and Cole situation. I think we re-sign one of these 3. I don't think we re-sign 2 or 3 of them. 3 of them, definitely not. 2 of them, I don't think so. I don't think we put that much money with Chark coming up for a payday. One of them will have to stay simply for a veteran standpoint, though. I do not think it's going to be Conley. I think it's going to be between Cole and Dede. I ultimately think the front office is going to lean towards Cole, but I personally would lean towards Dede. But that's, I mean, to each their own. I can see them liking Cole more simply from a consistency standpoint. I just think Dede has a bigger ceiling. And then on to the next guy is going to be James O'Shaughnessy. Now, I actually like O'Shaughnessy. He had a pretty good 2020 season with 27 catches, 252 yards. He's nothing special. I mean, you re-sign him to like a 2-year, $6 million deal. Most of it guaranteed. I mean, I'm sure he'd accept, truthfully. He's a good backup tight end 2, tight end 3 even. He's a guy who will get in there and do his job. He's not quite a tight end 1, but I think he's a very good tight end 2, in my honest opinion. And I think he's a guy that we should re-sign. Assuming we don't draft a tight end, but if we do draft a tight end, then maybe not, because we won't really have a need for him, truthfully. But again, I could see if the price is right with him, I could definitely see us bringing him back. He's been decent for us, besides that one, I believe he tore his ACL last year, if I remember correctly. He had some sort of serious injury. I think it was ACL. But I do not think the Jaguars will re-sign James, but I would like to if the price is right, like I said. but it all comes down to money at the end of the day, and if they don't believe that it's worth putting a couple million into him and it's cheaper to just grab somebody in a day 2 or day 3 of the draft for a lump sum of picks, then honestly, I can side with the franchise doing the smart thing in there. You don't ever want to just spend money to spend money. It's not worth it. It's stupid to have that mindset. That's the mindset we had in 2017, and it clearly did not work out. And then on to Josh Jones. Josh Jones is a very interesting one for me. I like Jones a lot. He had 82 tackles this year for us, 1 pass defense, 1 INT. I like what he brings. He's a very stout run defender, and he's a very good tackler, but he's honestly such a bad coverage safety. I don't think we can keep him as a starter. I'd like to re-sign him, but I do not think he's going to be a starter on this team next year. I just don't think he's good enough in coverage, simply. I remember talking to Packers fans, and that's exactly what they told me. They said he's amazing. He's an amazing tackler. He's amazing in the run game, but he just offers next to nothing in the passing game. He does not know how to pass coverage. He's basically another linebacker out there in safety. And when the Packers wanted to move the linebacker, that's when he ultimately didn't want to be a linebacker. He wanted to be a safety. But he's just one of those players. I don't think he fits either position perfectly. And it's sad to see because I think he's a good football player. I just think he doesn't have a home from a position standpoint. I think he needs to go into like a 3-4 where he can get covered up as a strong safety with bad coverage skills by a couple nice linebackers that can drop into coverage as well, and like a stout coverage safety opposite of him. And I just don't think that's us, unfortunately. So if I were him, I'd probably try to re-sign somewhere or go sign somewhere else. But I would be open to re-signing him if he wanted to re-sign. I just don't think he's going to be starting next year. He could start next year, but I don't think he will be. And then on to the final guy is going to be Tyler Eifert, and it's actually a club option. So this is completely up to the Jaguars. His club option carries a cap hit of $6.125 million. He had 35 catches, 339 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Do I think that's worth $6 million? No. But depending on what they do with OShaughnessy and then in the draft, that's what it'll come down to ultimately with this club option. If we don't re-sign OShaughnessy and we don't draft somebody, we 100% have to pick up that option. But I actually think the Jaguars should decline this option, re-sign O'Shaughnessy, and then draft the tight end. I think that tight end room offers more upside long term, and ultimately is just better overall. Because Eifert, I love Eifert. He seems like a very good dude, and he seems like he was a good tight end at one point, but he cannot play enough snaps to stay healthy. If he plays like a 3-down tight end, he gets hurt every year. And in this reserved role, he's not worth it from a money standpoint. It's easier to just go grab a tight end in the draft that's going to be 23 years old, 22 years old, and will ultimately do what he does, if not better, for a cheaper price and less injury. That one comes down to ultimately just being a smarter option from a front office standpoint. It's nothing personal. That's just business at that point. So ultimately, I think the Jaguars should re-sign Smoot, re-sign Dede, re-sign Sidney, re-sign Tre, let Cam Robinson walk, let Keion Cole walk for the right price. Depending on what his price point is, that one can go both ways. Let DJ Hayden walk, let Chris Conley walk, sign James O'Shaughnessy, let Josh Jones walk, and then deny Tyler Eifert's club option. So thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you're new, make sure to subscribe for more videos so you can see my content much easier. And as always, peace out, Duval.